We're very happy to say that this episode of the Metal Insight podcast has been kindly sponsored by the Dublin Podcast Festival, which is running at various venues around the city from the 19th to the 30th of September. And there's one show in particular that we're going to highlight. It's the live showing of Welcome to Night Vale, the cult US podcast which centres around would-be community updates for the small desert town of Night Vale. It features local weather, news, announcement from the sheriff, secret police, mysterious lights in the night sky, dark hooded figures with unknowable powers, and cultural events. Written by Joseph Fink and Jeffrey Craner, WTNV is narrated by Cecil Baldwin. Turn on your radio and hide, that's what they advise. So it's happening at the National Theatre in Dublin on the 28th of September. Tickets start at $22.50, and those are available from all the usual outlets. So on this episode of the Metal Insight podcast, we wanted to look at an aspect of the metal scene that's become increasingly evident as the years have gone by. As older, more legendary metal bands have grown longer in the tooth, some members just aren't available or willing or physically able to perform with the bands anymore. Maybe back in the 90s, if a bigger underground metal band lost a member, it would conjure up the prospect of a potential existential change in the nature of that band. You know, who would they get in? How would the sound change with the new member, etc. Nowadays, though, with more of an emphasis on simply keeping the festival beast fed, a lot of bands are just turning to younger hands to keep things moving. And that's the case with underground heavy metal bands too. These days, you've got a network of, well-connected underground metal festivals across Europe and to an extent in North America that are, still reaching out for the nostalgia and classic tunes of many, many name bands that are still active in the scene. Combine that then with the problem-solving hive mind and the instant messaging aspect of today's connected metal fans, and we're seeing that younger players are finding their way into the lineups of classic bands, and this has become practically the norm, it seems. But how does it actually feel to step up and perform then with a group that you've probably worshipped since your teenage years in your bedroom? Well, on this extended edition of the Metal Insight podcast with me, Lorcan Archer, we'll be speaking to two very talented young men from the US metal scene to get their own very separate takes on what it meant for them to take to the stage in this kind of very expectation-heavy atmosphere. What's more, they'd both be filling in for members of very rarefied doom/heavy metal bands who have no shortage of very dedicated fans. First up, we have Brendan Radigan of Boston doom metalers Magic Circle, not to mention a range of really killer hardcore bands including the rival Mob and Mind Eraser. He's been tapped to front a very special tribute to Pagan Altar, the much-loved UK doom band. Brendan is taking on an emotional as well as a musical mantle with this experience because he'll be filling the shoes of the much-missed singer of Pagan Altar, Terry Jones, who sadly passed away in 2015. What's more, Brendan will be performing alongside Pagan Altar members who of course include the late Terry's son, Alan, on guitar. So it's a very special sort of performance. We spoke to Brendan both before and after this tribute took place in Montreal at the last ever Wings of Metal festival. Also, as you'll hear, we'll be speaking to Jarvis Leatherby, the frontman of the very young and hungry Night Demon, and he's managed to famously convince the mighty Cirith Ungol to reform, and he's currently filling in on bass with that band as they perform at various different festivals. Cirith Ungol barely need an introduction. They're a hugely unique and influential Californian heavy metal band, give us a very unique taste of 80s metal with especially fantastic and amazing album artwork. Jarvis gave us an insight then into what it was like to actually put that reformation together, his own take on what it's like standing up there and performing alongside the band, as well as what it's like actually managing a more venerable set of band members every night and actually keeping things rolling. First up though, we'll speak to Brendan Radigan in New York and get his sense of expectations and trepidations too, before this very special Pagan Altar tribute show, which has just happened. You're listening to the Metal Insight podcast. But we have obviously this very, very special show coming up now at the beginning of September with Wings of Metal taking place. You, of course, have experience with Wings. You've been up there before with your other doom metal band, Magic Circle.
Yes. I absolutely think Wings of Metal is probably the best, in my personal opinion, it's my favorite heavy metal festival in the world. I mean, I like it more than, the way bigger ones. I mean, granted, I haven't been to the huge ones in Europe, but I would way rather go to that than Maryland Death Fest or something. I absolutely love the venue, and I've gone pretty much every year. I think I missed it once, but gone every other year, and I'm just absolutely happy to be there no matter what, whether I was playing it or not. So. For me, this is an honor on top of an honor. So, pretty crazy.
Tell me a little bit how this kind of special plan to kind of bring this kind of special tribute to Pagan Altar to the stage came about. We know that it's going to be,
Sure.
obviously it's going to be featuring Alan, who's still playing guitar or has always played guitar in Pagan Altar,
Yes.
as well as some other of the members of the last lineup. And of course you're going to be stepping in and taking Terry's place, who of course very sadly passed away a few years ago. So how did it actually come apart? And was it a case where somebody initially approached you, or how did it happen?
Well, it was a very, very sort of a funny out of nowhere thing. So the scenario was my brother, me, Kim, who's my girlfriend, and his fiance. We went on this little retreat out into the sticks in upstate New York for New Year's Eve.
Okay.
And we had the place for like 2 or 3 days. And of course, like we were kind of like lightly to heavily like partying the whole time. And in the midst of all this, I get this message from Anik, and it was, in regards to potentially putting together this tribute. She laid it out pretty point blank. She was like, I've been talking to the guys. I've been talking to Alan. They would be into doing this. I was thinking about singers. You were one of the people who came to mind. You had a history with Wings of Metal. Obviously, you love Pagan Altar. My music that I attempt to make at any rate takes great influence from them. Would you be interested in this? And it was funny because we were all partying. I was like showing it to people. I was like, oh man, is this happening? Is this my fucking like having a freak out or something? But after that wore off, I was like, holy shit, this is real. At first it was almost too heavy. I was like, man, like that's the heaviest thing I've ever been asked to do musically ever. Mm-hmm. And I was, I had a little bit of at first, nerves or apprehension, but then, I talked to some folks and I was like, I should absolutely, if they would have me, I'd be remiss not to take such a surreal, unique sort of opportunity to do this. And I pretty much signed on right away. And it's been a long time since New Year's, since January when I was asked about it. But there's still days where I'm like, holy shit, I'm going to do the same. It was definitely out of nowhere and very, very surprising and very surreal, and no, definitely the heaviest, coolest thing I'll probably ever do making music.
Like you said, it's quite a request, considering the history of the band. And
yes.
Did you immediately say yes, or did you take a moment to reflect and see?
I took a moment to reflect. Absolutely, I definitely didn't say yes right away. But probably just like you were saying, like the legendary sort of like intimidation factor, the personal factor. Father and son, like that's there's so many layers that I was thinking of. But then, after I had a little while to calm down, I guess I just sort of thought to myself, I was like, well, like if you think about it, it really is like timeless, immortal music. Terry to me was that he is every day like one of my favorite singers that ever lived. He is always in one way or another still alive. Like when I listen to his music, I guess at the end of the day, it should be about, keeping music alive for everybody to enjoy. Like if Alan is comfortable with it, and if the rest of the guys are comfortable with it, and they needed a singer, I would be happy to do it. And if it's making them happy, then it makes me happy.
Did you ever get a chance to meet or hang out with Terry or Alan in person?
No, as a matter of fact, man, I've never seen Pagan Altar. I've missed them every time, which is a whole other level of insanity. I remember the first Montreal was doomed. I think I had everything ready to go to drive up. I think I was going to drive up solo to that show to see Pagan Altar when they played in Montreal. There was I had like a family issue that came up, so I couldn't go to that. And then the MDF, I think there was also like some some sort of conflict or like another band was playing or some shit like that. I couldn't see them then. And I haven't seen them abroad. So aside from just, watching YouTube, I've never seen Pagan Altar. So this will be extra surreal for that, element.
Absolutely. You've mentioned that for you the music is quite timeless and strong. They are a band that have such a distinct personality and such a distinct sound.
Absolutely.
And what they came out of as well, like the circumstances of the band are quite special too. What's your musical relationship with Pagan Altar? Do you remember where you might have first heard them, or where you've bought a first album, anything like that?
I don't mean this, in any sort of like dorky despair, but you know how people say that you throw around the word entry level or whatever. They were a band like when I first started listening to music that was perhaps, I guess, more second and third tier. If you're talking about going down the line from like, I guess, Black Sabbath or like Iron Maiden or something like that in like English heavy metal.
Sure, you're digging into doom metal now.
Yeah, like when it was really when I was really like starting to like when that was pretty much just becoming like all that was pumping through my blood musically. They were absolutely like one of those bands. Like it was them. It was Witchfinder General. I guess you could mention them before, like some of the more like, second, third tier U.S. bands, Cirrus, Dutch, and I would say, I don't know, like very like early 20s for me. Mm-hmm. The first one was probably, it was volume 1, all the songs off of that, the demos and stuff. Pretty much heard that stuff and then went right out and bought as much of it as I could. And as far as like making, actually like attempting, I should say, to create heavy metal music on our end, they were from day one, from when we first Magic Circle, when we first started making music, they were absolutely one of the biggest influences, in our sound. So it's definitely a very personal connection with Pagan Altar. Probably one of the if there was ever like any band that I had a music wise and like sort of personal journey through making music connection to, it would be Pagan Altar.
A lot of guys would know, of course, and girls would know you as the singer of Magic Circle, and that's been something that you guys have put out 2 albums now. You've performed all over the place. We've seen you actually at the same festival, of course, play a couple of years back.
Oh yeah.
And would it be fair to say then that there is a fair dose of Pagan Altar in the actual genes of Magic Circle itself?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I would say it's not like when the first album, I would almost say they were instrumental for guiding us in the first LP. Like that, they were probably one of our main influences. As we keep making music, you branch off a little bit, but like I guess what really made us want to like pick up our fucking gear and to pick up a microphone and attempt to make heavy metal music, in a way that spoke to us the best, in a way that, like, I guess, we thought, like, we really would enjoy playing, that felt really fucking good to play like. Mm-hmm. Absolutely Pagan Altar, absolutely.
Of course, yourself, you've personally kind of stepped into the singing role of a number of different projects. A lot of people in the metal sphere would know you from Magic Circle, but you've been extremely active over the years with bands like Rival Mob, who are a hardcore band, and then you have Mind Eraser, who are maybe slightly more on the kind of faster, grindier end of things, but with some hardcore in there too. Is it a case of just total focus on that particular type of music and sound? I'm just wondering how you adapt yourself to these bands, which are so diverse that you actually perform in.
Okay,
it's a tough one. Sorry,
it's a tough one. It's one like I make jokes about all the time. So there's yes, I've definitely, since they started making any sort of music at all, for better or worse, when I was like 15 years old, I will happily admit that the quality is a very sliding scale. There's stuff I've made that I can listen back on. I'm like, that's still pretty good. And there's stuff I can listen to that I think is absolute dog shit, and I pretty much thought was dog shit when I was making it. But it's like a lot of it too. I've been like very, very, anyone I make music with, I would absolutely say I'm very close friends with. So sometimes if it's, various music, sometimes it's more like, oh, well, we're doing this as like friendos, you know what I'm saying? Like this is sort of checking off boxes that are more like, oh, well, I'm doing something with my friends, or like I'm being, I guess, like on the more punk rock tip, I'm being bombastic and offensive and aggressive, or like if it's something that's more, that requires, more musical prowess, then I would say it's absolutely 100% focus in making it sound as good as possible and making like the final product sound as good as possible. So it's been definitely like a mixed, a real mixed bag, and things have satisfied different sort of I don't know, elements of my personality or whatever. I would equate it to just like listening to various music. Like sometimes you're in the mood to listen to this or that, or I don't know, if you want to run on the treadmill for a while, you might put on this instead of that. I guess that's how it's been with me, for lack of a better description.
You're definitely no stranger to covers, though. I mean, I saw you rip out a Judas Priest cover when you played with Stone Dagger in New York,
yeah.
And then a little bit of digging around, you do a really good Eddie Vedder impression. I heard that Better Man cover. That was pretty spot on.
No, thanks. Well, it was a little bit sarcastic, but yeah, no, it was that band in particular was known for a lot of hijinks. We did a lot of very silly covers with that. That definitely wouldn't have that would have gone over like jack shit with like a more like hardcore punk sort of audience.
But you're on a college radio station, so it made total sense.
Yeah. I suppose it fell on deaf ears anyway. But yeah, it's I think it's fun just to, if it's always fun just to, I mean, for me, like I'm the most comfortable with anything I've ever played. I mean, I guess music-wise, I'm a jack of all trades and certainly a master of none. I can drum, I guess. I can play guitar, I can play bass, not well. But singing is what I'm most comfortable doing. And, yeah, absolutely. Whether it's just goofing around, like with that cover, or actually taking something extremely over the top, like almost like nervous breakdown level serious, like I'm taking this Pagan Altar show. It's always, I guess I'm always most comfortable with it.
Like you said, it's a totally different approach that's going on now. You're coming out of an environment where there's bands that, like you said, it's a group of friends. There's kind of a fun aspect to it. You're getting together and you're producing something. How are you dealing now with the practicalities of getting ready for this, for this quite a big occasion? You have to deal with the fact that you have band members who have an ocean between you. And I mean, how are you actually going about it? What's the practicalities for you to prepare for this?
Well, I'll tell you this, and I say this in absolute honesty. I've never practiced for something more in my life than I've practiced for this. I actually I almost know the songs better now than I know my own band songs. I would say it's every day. I'm listening to Pagan Altar, and I practice it probably at least 3 times a week, doing the full set. I guess I know the songs now almost like, I don't know, you could look at like a painting for years and notice intricacies in like the painting that you didn't notice a month before or something like that. I mean, it's just something where to me at least, there's just so little room for error. I mean, there shouldn't be. I mean, it's just like, it's not just music. Like I'm really coming into something that was part of someone's family, so I absolutely have to treat it with just an extreme, I would say, level of commitment. And I definitely haven't wavered for that a single day. I feel very confident right now.
Great.
I know, and also too, Andres is going to play from Kashmir. Is going to play second guitar. I've met him before, so at least I know somebody. I'm far from somebody who gets off on tooting their own horn, but I'm pretty confident now. Like I don't have any sort of, I don't have. Well, I mean, I hope for the best, but I don't have any like gnawing performance worries or anything like that. I know that I practice the songs. I'm my own fucking worst critic in the world, and I know, like, when I hear myself sing the songs, I do think they sound good. I can only hope that Alan and the rest of the guys feel the same. As you said, we have yet to have a practice together. We're going to practice, I think, 3 or 4 times before the gig. So we're all going to get to Montreal early, and we've got a practice space locked down.
I was going to ask you, in terms of your this constant level of practicing that you're putting towards it and absolutely perfecting your understanding of the songs, I assume you're probably going to start, your approach, I guess, is when you start to kind of jam together with the guys and play, you're probably going to start with, like, aiming for absolute accuracy, but then as the relaxation sets in and you guys get more comfortable, you're probably going to be able to just, sing like, Brendan Radigan singing these songs rather than absolutely emulating them, I guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, you know what, man? You just asked a hell of a question, and I'm not even sure how exactly to answer that, because this is the first time for me. I mean, like, if I had done something like this before, or anything remotely close to it, perhaps I'd have like a better perspective on just what you got at, like, where does Terry emulation end and Brendan begin? And dude, I don't know. I mean, like, I think that, like, when I listen to the songs, I guess I say I hear 50-50. Like, I mean, because obviously it is, at the end of the day, it is a tribute to Pagan Altar. So I'm not trying in any stretch to make this some Brendan Radigan show or like, I'm fronting.
That's 100% understood.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it's man, it really is like nothing I have ever done, or very likely nothing I ever will do.
Have you had a chance to hear the new song? And do you know where you're going to be performing any tracks from that one, or the new album, I should say?
Yeah. I've had the album for a couple weeks, man. I listen to it all the time. It's excellent, a fantastic album. And the song that we're going to do is on the album, and it's one that thankfully there was already like the demo track of that I could practice. So thankfully, for a minute, I got my communications a little tangled, and I thought that one of the songs I was going to have to do was like a brand new song that hadn't been done before in any way. It was a brand new song for the album, and I wouldn't be able to hear it, until like a month before the show, and I was like, oh shit. But no, thankfully it's a re-recorded song for the album. And so I've got that one well in the bag.
And how could we not? We also grabbed Brendan in person for a few minutes right after that special show, which just took place this weekend. Here's his take on the whole experience.
So I'm talking here to Brendan. Brendan, you just came off the stage with Pagan Altar. What are the emotions, if you can name them up?
Well, a mix of happiness and extreme relief. It's been an extremely long year thinking about it, in anticipation. And then being able to meet the guys, break the ice, there's just been levels of like anticipation to get through. It's been like climbing a ladder or a fucking mountain or something. So first of all, meeting them, I was a little bit nervous, got to break the ice. They all seemed like really wonderful people. That was great. The next day at practice, it was a similar thing. I was nervous again. I was like, holy shit. I met the guys. Now I got to make some music with them. Hopefully this goes good. We broke the ice right away again. And then I think after like the first song, after Pagan Altar, it all felt smooth as butter. It was really, really wonderful. I think just, those three, obviously, they're masters. And I just think Andres and I were lucky enough to be able to vibe with them somehow. And we had 3 really great practices. And I have yet to go and connect with the guys again right after the set. Sure. And if they're smiling and they're happy, then it's probably going to make my year. So I think that's where I'm at right now. like we even talked about before when before the set when you called me a while ago, it's just like nothing I've ever fucking done. It's pretty much, I mean, it's like being in a brand new band that's never played a show, but that's a legendary band that's been playing for 30 years. It's the weirdest fucking thing I've ever been involved in. So yeah, like, you know, it starts off and I think you're sort of like, okay, this had better be fucking good. Then as it gets more and more comfortable, you sort of start vibing more together, you start rocking a little more together.
Sure.
Definitely felt like that.
I can feel that there was a real sense, especially towards the end, that you guys had achieved a level of like easiness and like really feeling. It felt like you guys were relaxed, you know.
Absolutely. Well, the thing is like when you know, another interesting thing, I've never seen Pagan Altar live, so this was my Pagan Altar live experience. I've only ever watched like, you know, thousands of YouTube clips of them, and but what was awesome about watching them even was they did have like a nice relaxed vibe live. Like it wasn't like how can I word this in a somewhat eloquent manner? Like they don't have like a overly aggressive, you know, like rip your head off. You know, that's not at all like the vibe of Pagan Altar on stage. That's certainly not what I wanted to bring. I wanted it to be more like what I watched when I saw them, and it is very relaxed, very like comfortable, very smooth. Hopefully that came across. I mean, the songs are like that. I think they're high energy, you know, heavy metal rock and roll songs, but they have that nice like smoothness to them, and I hope that came across. Doing this, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, has zero to do with me, only as far as honoring that music goes. That's all I ever wanted to do, and if the audience was happy with it, and, you know, more importantly, the fellows were happy with it, then I am happy with what I did.
Final question, would you do it again?
Abso-fucking-lutely. Any day, anytime, anywhere.
So, from the emotions of fronting one of your favourite bands to the determination needed to actually piece back together a classic band, Jarvis Leatherby, who usually fronts heavy metal act Night Demon, has given us a very special insight into his goals in terms of reuniting Cirith Ungol, his priorities there, and essentially how he wasn't going to let anything at all stand in his way in terms of getting this legendary 80s band back in action with a bang. Here's Jarvis.
I sing for Jaguar, and I have a management company, and I run a booking agency called Razor, based out of London. So I run 2 festivals in California. So I definitely have my hands full. I have a job. I'm just self-employed.
I hear you. Absolutely. So that's fantastic to hear. So you have been kept, no doubt, 100% busy since you got back from Europe.
No doubt. We got back last week and then went right to Vegas for the Psycho Las Vegas Festival. Cirith Ungol played that. And now I'm back home working out details for our festival, Frost and Fire, that's coming up in October. I got a gig with Jaguar in France in a couple weeks. So, yep, staying busy, man. Keeping it going.
You know, Cirith Ungol have come out of this this kind of long-term hibernation, and they had this kind of quite triumphant first appearance at the Frost and Fire Festival. But now it's a case where there are shows that are kind of going on, and a sort of an intermittent one. They're hitting these festivals in Europe and on the East Coast. Like, how does it feel for you, kind of getting out there and kind of semi-regularly playing with the band now?
Pretty good. You know, it took a lot of work, you know, to get those guys back into playing shape, and you know, I mean, it took a lot of work just even getting them back together, you know. I mean, I had tried for years and years and years, but when they finally decided, you know, I mean, these are guys that hadn't played in 25 years, not only with each other, but not even in bands, and not even their instruments, you know. I mean, Rob, the drummer, had like sold his drum set when the day the band broke up. He was like, you know, they were just over it completely, which is trippy, you know, because as a musician, you know, I mean, at least if you're not going to take it seriously, most musicians still like to do it as a hobby, you know, or you know, just hanging around your house and pick up the guitar or whatever, you know, like that's normal stuff, right? So I mean, but
but no, none of that happened. So it's been interesting, and when the reunion happened, for me it was just like, look, let's take it one gig at a time. Let's see how this is going to go. So now it's to the point where, there's obviously been a lot of interest around the world. So being able to do those things are cool because, I don't have to take the band out on the road, and, they don't have to deal with all that stuff. They can still have their normal lives. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they get to go and play these, big markets and, big festivals and big shows where, playing in front of people that have never gotten a chance to see them. And for the band, playing places that they've never got a chance to not only play, but ever even go in their lives. Many of these guys, actually, I think all of them had never been to Europe before, ever in their lives, or New York, So, it's, there's a lot of redemption there, and I've been very proud to be a part of it. I don't know how much longer it's going to go. I can project maybe another 2-3 years. The guys are in their 60s. We turn down 80% of the things we get offered. We just want to keep it special. But at the same time, there's a lot of new material being written right now. So a record is definitely a plan for the future. There's a live record coming out next year. There's more festivals being booked. So it looks to be a pretty cool thing right now. So. Yeah.
Take me a little bit through the process that you went through, because you tore off a serious chunk of work there. You decided to kick off a brand new metal festival in Ventura, California, and you wanted to reunite this band for their first show in what's been decades now at this stage. In terms of the amount of work that you had in front of you to manage this from the ground floor and actually get going there, you said it had been something you've been kind of pestering them for years. But what was it that kind of laid the groundwork to make it happen last year?
I named it Frost and Fire in honor of them, just because, in the city of Ventura where we're from, they are they're the guys who put metal on the map here, So it just kind of made sense. I thought the name was cool too. It's always hard to come up with names, So I just thought it made sense. So I asked them if they were cool if I did that, and they said, yeah, that'd be great, Then I took it one step further and said, hey, would you guys be open to coming out and doing an autograph signing session, you don't have to play or anything. And so they were into that idea. And then they came and realized how many people flew from all over the world just to meet these guys,
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, wow, they used to think I exaggerated a lot when I would come back from my trips and be like, hey, man, something's happening, They'd be like, yeah, we know. We've been on the internet. We know there's people that have discovered the band, but they had no idea the magnitude of what it really was.
Where would you actually be talking to these guys? Do you guys just hang out through bands, or you said most of them were inactive in music, but you still actually kind of had this conduit where you were able to talk to them in Ventura?
Oh yeah, for sure, man. We would hang out and go to dinner, go drink. I would play concerts with bands I was in, and they would come and attend.
Sure.
So yeah,
they kind of stayed active as metal and rock fans, right?
Not really.
Okay.
To be honest, not really. Not really. There's a huge gap there of stuff that they just that they have no knowledge of. They kind of just stuck with the classics and that's it. But they were really supportive of everything that I was doing musically and stuff like that, and they knew I was a fan of the band,
mm-hmm.
of their band. So they used to, give me things all the time, from the old days, oh, hey, here's a fucking or an old sticker or some vinyl and stuff, and I'd be like totally stoked on that stuff, So
mm-hmm.
for them, it was kind of like old guys just kind of passing the torch or whatever, or just kind of being excited a little bit just to be around some other people that were still playing and stuff like that.
Yeah, you got them kind of back into the zone, and you were able to impress on them exactly how much people still love those Cirith Ungol records. Right,
and that's when I had the signing session at the festival. They came out, and they were happy. They were just so happy that I was bringing a heavy metal festival to our town. I mean, they were really happy about that in general, you know.
Mm.
It had nothing to do with them. But the cool thing was that they all got together for the first time in years and years. And I think it was cool that they all saw each other. So whatever bad blood they had or whatever, just years of not talking, that all went away quickly, you know. So I would say a couple months after the first festival, we started talking seriously about it. And Night Demon started playing some Sarathungal songs, and we would invite some of the members down to play with us. And it kind of started like that, and then another guy would come in, and then another guy would come in, and we kind of built it up where it was me playing bass, and it was Rob, the original drummer, Jimmy, who played guitar on Paradise Lost. So he was the last guitar player of the band before they broke up, and then Greg, the original guitarist. So it was like that. And then Tim would always come to the rehearsals. He would never sing. He never wanted to. Like he just didn't really. He was just having fun watching us jam. He had no interest in really doing the band, or so he said. And that went on for months. And then one day we were at a Metal Blade Records Christmas party, and he just came out and told me, like, all right, I'm going to do it. So I said, okay, here we go. So, I mean, the rest is history from there. But it really,
bit by bit, you were able to convince them and just kind of show them exactly what they could achieve or get to.
It took a long time, though. I mean, really, like, it's kind of the same thing with the progression of Night Demon. Like, a lot of people think, oh, you guys are so lucky and all this, but it's like, a lot of people don't realize, how much work goes into it. And like, when you're grinding every day, all day, things don't happen very quickly. They happen naturally over time,
Yeah.
And so I wasn't jumping out of my seat out of excitement when we decided to do it, because I'd already been working on it for so long, and the signs were already pointing that it was going to happen, but a lot of work, a lot of time, and not just on the managerial end, on the musical end, so I was fully invested into every aspect of the band. But what was the catalyst of the whole thing was our band, because, these guys are like our best friends, and all of a sudden, Night Demon guys are not around anymore. We're just gone, like, all the time. And they're just like, they missed us, They're just like, where are you guys today? And then it was a thing where they're like, fuck, like, we always wanted to be doing what those guys are doing, and we never could do it, And here I am the whole time going, but you can, and you can do it on such a higher level now.
It's kind of a joint, almost a little kind of a joint enterprise that you kind of sort of have going on, where you're supporting these guys.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely, man. And it's cool. It's cool to do it that way, Like, it's just. It feels we're like a gang, Like we get off the plane, and we're all wearing, like, we have like matching, like, satin jackets that have the band name on them. Yeah, we're like, it's pretty cool, man. We're like a sports team or something,
But I was going to say, it's great that you've been able to bring this experience to people like me, who, along with, like, say, the only other band I can kind of think of who would be in the same sort of, well, not even as big league, would be someone like Heavy Load, who people still don't think they're going to come back, but like. Sarathungal, yeah, we'll see. Yeah, that would be cool. But
they will.
We never really thought we were going to get a chance to do it, because there was no real news percolating out there in the kind of the news or the blogosphere or whatever.
Absolutely.
But you knew it was happening. But of course, when people go to see Sarathungal now, that they have this great opportunity to see them. And when I saw you guys in New York, or when fans in Europe saw you at Chaos Descends, or when people will see you shortly playing at festivals like Days of Darkness in Baltimore and Hammer of Doom as well, you're on stage now and you're playing bass with them, and you're part of the Sarathungal lineup that's up there. Talk me through maybe just how that feels to actually be playing those riffs and playing those, like, monumental metal songs, and actually, like you said, you're part of a gang and you're part of the unit. But how did it feel actually kind of stepping up and saying, I'm going to be playing these Sarathungal songs?
Well, I mean, like I said, when we started, I was there by default. I've tried to get Mike Luger Flint, the original bass player, back, and like, he wants to do it, but he doesn't live anywhere near us, and he's got a lot of stuff going on in his life, and it's just not it's just not in the cards right now, So it's not a selfish thing that I said, okay, I'm going to bring these guys back from then and I'm going to be the bass player. As a matter of fact, I was very against it at first, and I didn't want to do that at all. I thought it would interfere with what I was doing with my band. I could manage the band from anywhere, but to play in it, I have to be there. The guys need to rehearse regularly too, So when my band's on tour 8 to 10 months out of the year, I can't be there, physically. So, at this point, it wouldn't feel right without any of the 5 of us on stage, Again, if Flint comes back, I'm leaving that door open for him for sure. But it's a weird experience for me. I'll tell you why, because I'm not, I get on stage and I channel the energy and the spirit of the band when I play. But I know the songs so well and I play every night, with one band or another, so, and I'm on stage all the time. So I'm very comfortable out there. And it's just second nature to me, to be honest. And the main thing I'm concerned about when I'm on stage is looking out for everybody else and directing traffic, really. I'm always, because there's hiccups here and there, or somebody will forget a part or forget where we're at, or trip over a cable, or somebody's amp goes off, or there's always something, but so, or the lighting's not right, and I'm going over to the soundboard, or the monitors aren't right during the set, so I'm always out there, I'm basically the stage manager out there, and the hype man,
Yeah,
so
for sure.
really, that's kind of how it is. And I never really gave a shit if anybody accepted me in the playing in the band or not. It really didn't it really doesn't matter to me what anybody else thinks. I know that's what they want, and that's why I do it, because my job is to make sure that those guys have what they want, they really, really want me to do it. And so that's cool. I feel like it's better that I'm up there, running the show as a band member than if I was running the show as a guy on the side of the stage not playing. It'd be a lot harder to communicate with them on stage if I was in that role. At that point, I would just have to let it go and let it roll and just be like, okay, you guys are going to do what you're going to do. But it is cool. I played in a lot of tribute bands in my time, and that made me a better player, being able to play every Kiss bass line and every Geezer Butler bass line, imaginable. Me just being able to pick up an instrument right now and play them all note for note, it expanded, it helped me as a player, to be kind of when you can learn the way that your heroes and your influences played and be able to reproduce that. And it expands you as a player and how you write and how you play your own stuff, So Cirith Ungol is no exception to that, It's obviously a very unique style of playing. And at first it was a big challenge to me because I was just not used to it. Just the phrasing, the certain spots where things are just not where I would normally put them, or not where a lot of people would, But once I caught on to it, again, it's become second nature. But it's pretty cool, I could be on the road for 3 months and those guys will fly in and meet me somewhere and I'll walk on stage and do the gig, I don't need, and then we have a bass player we have 2 different bass players actually at home that rehearse with them weekly. So,
wow, okay.
So they have I have stand-ins for me while I'm gone that they get together
2
with the band.
stand-ins, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have to have 2 because they're getting together 2 to 3 times a week. I'm trying to keep them in shape. So I just want to, you have to have a backup plan and then a backup plan for that, I'm responsible for this,
I hear you. So are you even when you're in Europe and the guys, let's say we're back and you're on the road with 19 and you're on that cell with a 7-hour time distance and you're how's practice going? Is everything going? Or you're messaging around and just making sure that this ship keeps steaming, yeah?
Every day, yeah, 9-hour time difference, yeah, yeah.
God, no.
So yeah, every day, that's just yeah, that's how it is. And I'm working on merchandising. I'm doing all the web stuff. I'm booking the band. I'm doing licensing deals. I'm doing record contracts. There's all kinds. There's a lot involved with it. There's business stuff that has to be dealt with. There's money. There's all kinds of stuff. There's a web store that needs to run, and things need to get shipped out. Like it's a full-on business, and and being a manager of the band is like also being a personal manager of the band. It's like I have to treat everybody in the band differently. I treat them as equals, but like everybody needs to be dealt with on an individual basis because they're all such different characters, And sometimes it's like I find that, especially when especially when we started, I'm like, the least amount that these guys communicate with each other, the better, the more they communicate through, because it's like, you get shit that comes up. It's like, I know that was you that threw a rock through my windshield in '84, I'll never let that go.
Yeah, there's so much history, and like, I suppose is it an aspect where, I mean, it's great that you're putting this together and delivering these shows and making this happen, but, Sir Thungal were a band that seemed to be almost tragically unlucky in terms of what they produced and what they delivered. But, I mean, you probably don't want them to put their heads together and get negative in any way, right?
It happens, it happens. It's just, I mean, maybe sometimes I look at it, and I'm like, okay, I like in hindsight, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I was like, I see why this band didn't last, or I see why this band didn't go anywhere, like I see that sometimes. Like, okay, like a couple things that are very well-known sayings, especially in the entertainment business. It's like, okay, right place, right time. You only get anywhere if you know. It's all about who you know. It's all about who you know, not what you know, who you know, right? So both those things are true, but you have to position yourself to be in the right place and make that the right time. Nobody's going to like, everybody has these visions of this like Hollywood fantasy, this movie bullshit where it's like, you go and you open for a band and you get discovered by Mr. Big and they take you away to this mystical wonderland of caviar and mansions and stuff. And it's like, that doesn't happen for anybody. And when it does, it's usually a really bad sign, So, you need to have experience. You need to go through the motions. You need to have the heartbreak. You need to persevere. You have to be able to get through any kind of hurdle, and there's a lot of them, man. I just had a couple today, pretty bad situations. Almost, I would consider them crisis, but you just got to keep moving through that,
Have you found that to be a particularly rewarding experience to get it to that level where, it's actually working out and where it's actually happening in that sort of way?
Oh, absolutely. It's honestly the greatest accomplishment in my life. Because it's something that people that I really respect, they said would never happen, and they've told me for years, and they said stop trying.
You've said now that there's actually, like, you're looking to the next big thing with the band, and we're looking at producing new music and potentially writing this new album and dealing with all the intricacies of that. So you've been able to step in and fill this kind of managerial and kind of musical performance role in playing with the bands, but like, where does, I guess I'm going to ask is, like, where does Jarvis's input come in terms of the composition of new Sir Thungal music? Is there any sort of actual input from you going on? Or
I try not to. My input comes as a producer. I'm a pretty accomplished songwriter in many different genres, and these guys have been out of the game for a while. However, creatively, there's so much flowing from them right now. It's almost too much to handle. Like it's a lot of stuff, So my job comes, I let them demo stuff out, and then I come in and say, okay, let's try this, let's move this around, or that part's too long, let's get rid of that, or we need a bridge here, we need something to connect these two parts, So I basically come in as a producer, is my role.
One of the things about Sir Thungal, and I think you alluded to it earlier when you were like learning to play the songs on bass, is that they're a kind of a very special odd band in how they've traditionally put songs together. Like they have sections where the bass just flies out and like the vocals go flying in all these different directions. And I suppose the challenge is to write a Cirith Ungol album in 2017, still sounding like Cirith Ungol, but letting them do their own thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a bit of a producer's dilemma there. Like, you've quite the challenge in front of you.
You just have to think backwards, I mean, it's like if there was a music theory book, that you picked up, you would learn music theory, and you would learn, how to properly write and stuff like that. And in the back page, it would be a picture of Cirith Ungol and say, here's what not to do. It's incorrect. So, but there's something great about that.
Yeah, definite je ne sais quoi. Can I ask what level things have gotten to? You guys are still demoing, or is there an album written? Or?
There's a handful of songs that are pretty close. And then there's a lot of material from back in the day that nobody's ever heard. So, we might do a Van Halen type thing, where, re-record and modernize some songs that were written in the days of King of the Dead and Frost and Fire and stuff that people have not heard. And, that helps a lot too, because that stuff was written when that other stuff was written, so we still have some of that will be, new material to the world, which is a blessing, They're old albums, they were pumped to get in and do it, but some of them took so long to record, or they ran out of money. And then when it became time, it was just forced out, or the quality of the layout was bad and stuff. I mean, without those Michael Whalen album covers, we might be having a different conversation right now, to be honest with you, I mean, those things were key to the success of the band, and they really, and Michael, he was at the Defenders show, which was great, and he's got a new painting for us for the live album, so we're keeping that tradition going,
Oh, that's fantastic to hear, because it is something that people immediately associate these epic covers with their music.
But I mean, without that, I mean, we might be having a different conversation right now, or no conversation at all. So there's a lot of it factors that come into the history of this band. I really think, though, with playing more and more of these festivals and reissuing these records, that the popularity right now is stronger than it's ever been, and that's something I'm really proud of. It's not like the cult status of the band has definitely not worn off, and more people are getting into it that didn't like it before or weren't listening to it before, or at least and even if they're not into it, they surely know who the band is now. So that was a big goal of mine, to really just put this band, I mean, they've been in the history books, because they were innovators of it, and they were creators of it when the whole thing started. But I want to put them in the books like with a bullet,
And that was Jarvis Leatherby. And of course, things have been on the up and up for Night Demon lately too, who had a confirmed tour providing direct support to none other than Accept in Europe early next year, having been just announced, and their first ever shows in Belfast and Dublin in November, now having been scheduled. So it does seem like all that hard work on the tour circuit is paying dividends for them. And I know I'll really look forward to seeing what Cirith Ungol can provide in terms of new steel over the next year or so. So there you have it, 2 different situations, 2 different singers, 2 very unique experiences. You can, of course, subscribe or tune into the Metal Inside podcast for more of the same. The podcast is available on iTunes, on Stitcher, on SoundCloud, and very shortly will also be on YouTube for your convenience. Earl Grey will be back very shortly. He'll be speaking to Rings of Saturn, absolutely mind-boggling technical metal bands. Very interesting set of guys too. He'll be very shortly bringing that to you, and I'll be conversing with New York Wonder Kids Artificial Brain, who I absolutely adore and loved their last album. So we'll be having those coming up to you over the coming weeks. We are, of course, very happy to help you advertise or sponsor on the podcast. If you feel your band or project would like to connect with our expanding listenership, please just go ahead and drop an email to mi@metalireland.com, and we'll be sure to get you sorted. This has been the Metal Inside Podcast 38, over and out.